Good evening, all. It's a great pleasure to be here to give an introduction to Sri Gurumurthy sir. Sri Swaminathan Gurumurthy, the chief guest of the day, is, as most of you would be aware, is a CA by profession and a journalist by passion. A fierce nationalist as well as a fearless journalist. He is also a much sought after consultant, corporate consultant, who offers pragmatic and often Indianized solutions to complex problems, not only to corporates, but to many politicians who seek his advice as well. For those who may not be aware, Sri Gurumurthy rose to fame in the 1970s with his fight against the oppressive emergency, and in the 1980s with his investigative journalism against the business tycoon Sri Dhirubhai Ambani. His articles in Indian Express used to be looked forward to with trepidation by politicians and immense interest by the public. He was a nightmare to many, who is who, including the then PM Sri Rajiv Gandhi. He was ranked 30th in India's 50 most powerful people in 2017 by India Today. He took over the editorship of the popular Tamil weekly Thuglak on the passing away of the legendary Cho Ramaswamy, and has been running the same with no less fervor and more circulation. Among his myriad commitments, he has also been the visiting professor of IIT Mumbai and is also serving on the board of the Reserve Bank of India. He is also the distinguished professor of legal anthropology in Shastra University. Though he is extremely well versed in varied subjects like economics, management, philosophy, law, politics, etc., he never once aspired for any position in public life. Prime Minister Vajpayee offered him the position of the finance minister, but he politely declined the same on the sagacious advice of his reverential guru, His Holiness Paramacharya. That way, he was the best FM that India never had. Sri Gurumurthy has made mincemeat of several corporate and political Goliaths, and today has come to bestow his jnana to the young Davids. I am immensely delighted and proud to present my guru, mentor and ideologue, Sri S. Gurumurthy, to all of you. Sri Gurumurthy.
Namaskarams to all. You know, when you are introduced like this, the bar is raised to so high that I have to perform to justify the kind of introduction that has been given. But he made one good point that that the best finance minister the country missed. If I had become, maybe I would not have got this compliment. Dr. Revati Parameshwaran, principal of this very important institution that is serving and creating the best talent for our society. Dr. Ishwar Krishnaya, who also spoke very highly about me. I recall my association with the Great Lakes Institute, which I have addressed at least thrice, if I remember right. Prabhakar, my good friend, and Padma Shri, the vice principal, dear students, parents, and others who are present here. You know, the management science has been expanding, deepening, and diversifying. There was a time when intellectual quotient was considered to be the most important thing in management science. Then it became emotional quotient. Then it became, that is EQ. Then it became EQ2. Ethical quotient became more important. Now they say spiritual quotient is more important in management education because all other quotients have exhausted themselves. So we need a higher value to understand the world, its connection with nature, its connection with all the living creation. And so we want not just reason, we just don't want ethics only, but we want a very spiritual way of understanding the world is what is now being taught in many management schools. Another important shift, reason was supposed to be the most important thing in taking decisions in accounts, in logic, in law, in discussions, in sociology. But now they say almost 70% of the decision making is intuitive. Reason has very little role to play because decision making through intuition is something which reason cannot grasp, logic cannot explain. So you are in a very highly confused situation about what management education is today. So if Dr. Ishwara Krishnayar could explain with precision as to what is management science today, I would like to be his student to listen to what it is. I didn't know what to talk because I have lost my touch with addressing school students. Long time ago, I think about 20 years ago, they had asked me to address large students in the open in the PS Senior Secondary School in that playground. I remember, right? But I don't know what was the occasion. So I have really lost touch with addressing the young minds. And Mr. Krishnayar said he is very happy to talk to them, but I do not know whether it be psychologically and in terms of the subject which I am trying to express to you, I am going to communicate to you in the way I would like to communicate, and you would understand it in the way I would like you to understand. Before I came here, Prabhakar rang me up and said, "Sir, you should talk about your experience as to how you explained the situation, the dialogue that took place between Sri Krishna and Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, and how Krishna approached Arjuna and how Arjuna saw Krishna." This is a very important experience which I had, and that is what I want to start with. Because Bhagavad Gita starts with confusion. Arjuna was in utter confusion and distress. And army is there on both sides. He was the greatest warrior for the Pandavas. And in his mind, not only confusion, a great distress, pain, suffering. And he just threw his weapon and said, "I am not going to fight." And he has to be turned into a warrior. He has to be motivated to take up the task of fighting. I thought that was the biggest management lesson, that someone who is in such a distress is turned into the mightiest warrior that he was always. But the spirit of which he lost completely. And he became worthless. He didn't even have the nerve to hold his weapon. So how this experience came to me is again because I underwent almost the same experience when I was asked to address a huge audience of Gita scholars in Kaladi sometime in 1993. They were all great scholars. And I was the last speaker, fortunately. So I was to give the valedictory address. And I think there is a parallel between what happened then and what I am going to talk to you. Now there is a great confusion about our country. You know whether this is a country which had any original population at all. We are talking about Dravidians, we are talking about Aryans. We are talking about this country was a country built by invaders. In fact, even when the British came, they said they turned it into one country. In the year 1909, Mahatma Gandhi wrote a book. And that book, none of us have read, I can be sure, unless anyone is able to lift one's hand to say, yes, I have read it. That is the book which every one of us must read. Because it was not a book, it was a dialogue. The dialogue is Gandhi as the editor and Gandhi as the reporter. He was doubling in two capacities. And when Gandhi as the reporter was asking questions to Gandhi as the editor, and that formed the dialogue that is known as Hind Swaraj, that is available free on the net. If any of you have 2-3 hours of time to know what is the best kind of knowledge you must secure, it is that book. He wrote it when he was traveling from Cape Town to London. In the ship, he began writing. And he began writing in Gujarati. When his right hand pained, he began writing with the left hand. He wrote 39 hours, he continued to write. And that is that book. And in that book, one question that comes is, it was always the question of the Indian population, Indian educated people, Indian intelligentsia, Indian academia. Were we one nation? So the reader asked the question to Mahatma Gandhi, Mr. Gandhi, how do you say we were one nation? It is only the British who built post offices and railways and who turned us into one nation. Mahatma Gandhi gives a beautiful answer. I am not going to give it to you. You have to read it to find out if you want to know what Mahatma Gandhi had in mind. Why I mentioned is that were we one country at all? Were we one people at all? What are we? Who are we? What is this country? This is the confusion that was created about not our future, but about our past. Every country will have an uncertain future, but we had an uncertain past. Our past was uncertain. The present is confusing. The future is meaningless. This is the extent to which the Indian mind was confused. Even after independence, it has not got clear even today. It is in this context I am going to present to you what was my state of mind when I was put on the stage to talk to great scholars on Gita as to what Gita means. So, scholar after scholar spoke. They compared Gita with Brahma Sutra Bhashya and Kenopanishad and Kathopanishad. I knew very little about all these things, as most of the English educated people in India are unaware of what the treasures of knowledge that has been built in this country, made available but not passed on to the younger generation. I am one of the unfortunate persons who missed the highest spiritual knowledge of India. So when they were talking, I didn't know what to talk. But because my name was very well known, as I was introduced as this or that, that doesn't mean anything. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam says, the most popular person will be recognized as the most educated person in Kali Yuga. You can understand, knowledge and popularity have nothing to do with each other. But because by accident I became popular, every one of the things that made me popular was an accident in my life. I was a chartered accountant. I was by accident forced to become a journalist. Then by accident I got arrested by Rajiv Gandhi. And then I became very popular. Then I exposed to Bofors. That made me even more popular. I did nothing to make myself popular. It is all accident. So that accidental popularity made people feel I am also a knowledgeable man. But I am no knowledgeable man. I am always trying to gather knowledge. So I am going to tell you what knowledge I gathered in that great conference and how it is relevant for what I am telling you. So, I had not read Gita in depth. I had not read Upanishads in depth. I had not even read Ramayana and Mahabharata in depth. So, I went back to the Kurukshetra war, where Arjuna is unwilling to fight. Krishna wants to make him fight. Arjuna was in total confusion and distress, as I already told you. Then how Krishna raises his conscience levels to the level of making him recognize who he is, what is his responsibility, and how he should face the situation. First, he calls him, "You are neither a man nor a woman. Who are you? The whole world will laugh at you, they will spit on you." He appeals to his lower instincts to make him react. He doesn't react. Then he talks about karma yoga, jnana yoga, sannyasi yoga, moksha sannyasi yoga. He keeps on raising his level of consciousness, making him feel more and more what he is. He is showing the mirror to him. And finally, he reveals himself as the Almighty. And you are doing nothing, I am doing everything. You are just a player. I am the artist who is making you play. I have written the script already. Even then, he doesn't move. And finally, at one point, Arjuna realizes that he has a duty to perform. And so Krishna tells him, "Itite jnanamahyadam guhya guhyataram maya vimarshayeta tadeshana yachet tatavrudi." This is the 63rd sloka in the 18th chapter. It says, "I have taught you the secret of secrets. Now you will do what you think is correct." So the question came to my mind, why Krishna did not say this in the first chapter? This I asked the audience, the scholarly audience, why Krishna, who said this, granted the freedom of action to Arjuna in the 18th chapter, 63rd sloka, did not do it in the first chapter, in the 13th sloka. So the audience did not answer. "Sir, I am attempting an answer. Will you at least approve or disapprove of it?" I asked them. I said, the entire message of Gita is that a confused man does not deserve freedom. Unless the confusion is removed, his freedom has no meaning. So the most important thing for free people is that they should not be confused. That's what I am going to tell you. We are confused about our country. We know nothing about our country. The fundamental facts that we need to know about our country, we do not know. And that is what I am going to tell you. The basic facts about India, which is available. Today you don't need a textbook for anything. You have computer, you have online. You know everything. The chat GPT has come and gives you everything that you want to know. Of course, sometimes wrongly. But I want to tell a few things. You know, the entire geography of India is just 2.5% of the world's geographical area. Do we know that? You know that? 2.5%. The human population here is 18%. The cattle population here is 30%. We have other mammals, birds, 8%. How is it that 2.5% of the land area is able to house, feed, make people work, and live in harmony, not only among themselves, with cattle, with cows, with buffaloes, with... Have we ever raised this question in our mind? America is 3.5 times the size of India. Its cattle population, its human population is 1/4 of India's. Its cattle population is 1/4 of India's. China's land area is 3.5 times the size of India's. The same position. How is it that we are able to live with these animals, share space with them, share food with them? How? Has this question ever come to our mind? No. Because our education system prepares you only to be a management expert or a chartered accountant or a lawyer or a scientist. All these are components of life which is important. But that doesn't make you the whole of life. That doesn't make you an understanding person. That doesn't make you an empathetic person. That doesn't make you a person who can make India understand the world. You are all going to be persons who are going to be the window of the India to the world and of the world to India. Not many Indians will have the kind of opportunity to study in an institution which puts up merit above everything and make you understand the importance of knowledge. But we may need the right kind of knowledge. So, these are basic facts. I have spoken about this. I have taught, I have addressed meetings of MBA students. I have addressed meetings of chartered accountants. They do not know these basic facts about India. You know how we are able to feed in the whole world? The total land area that is available, which is used for agriculture and for farming, is 10.6% of the total land area is only devoted for crop farming. 35% is used for cattle farming, that is to produce meat. To produce meat, you need crop, because those animals will not eat only grass. They need wheat, they need barley, they need rice, they need everything else. So, these animals have to be fattened to produce meat. You know, this 35% of agricultural land which is devoted to producing meat yields how many calories? What is the calorific value of the land that is devoted for producing meat? Can anyone tell you here? The entire 35% of the agricultural land devoted for producing meat yields only 17% of the caloric value and 37% of the protein value. But the 10.6% land which is used for producing crops, cereals, that produces 83% of the calorific value and 63% of the protein value. You know, in India, we survive because we are cereal eaters. Our cereal gives us the energy. You go through a particular website I am giving you where you can get all these figures, ourworldindata.com. That gives you all the data which I am mentioning to you. We are able to live with 18% population on 2.5% of the land area with 1% of agricultural land because we eat cereals. And you know what is the average consumption of meat in America? 109 kg per head per annum. In Europe, it is 89. In South Africa, it is 120. You know how much it is in India? Any idea? 3.1 kg. Even the non-vegetarians here eat meat only as some kind of sabji. Our main food is cereal. That is why we are able to accommodate 18% of the population, 30% of cattle population, 500 million is the total cattle population we have. When I mentioned this to international audiences, they were shaken. Because nowhere in the world you have such huge living organism living together. 8% of India's biodiversity in a land of 2.5%, 30% of those creatures, mammals, birds, do not exist anywhere in the world. How is it that we are able to live like this? It's not an accident. It is a living model that has been given to us. It has been given to us by our scriptures, by our great saints, and retailed through family customs, traditions, values. That's why we worship cow. That is why we worship even monkeys. There is a relationship. We need them, they need us. We need trees. You know, those who have come to my house, Prabhakar has come to our house. In almost the center of the house, there is a neem tree. The choice was to cut the neem tree and have 2,000 square feet more living space for a joint family of 24 people at the time in 1999. Or to leave the tree and not have this 2,000 square feet extra construction. As a family, we decided that we will not cut the tree because I come from a village. In a village, you will not be allowed to cut a long living tree unless there is permission from the village panchayat. Because they know it is needed. It is in Arthashastra. In fact, Emperor Ashoka said, these are forests in which nobody should go. Virata Parva says that without forests, tigers can't live. Without tigers, forests cannot be protected. So we need tigers and forests. In the year 1900, we had almost close to 100,000 tigers. And we had 33% forest coverage. In 2006, our tiger population came down to 1,400. Our forest coverage came down to 18%. And now we are restoring the tiger population. It is almost 3,200 now. Our forest coverage has gone up to almost 22%. Because only wildlife can protect forests. We know forest is necessary. Now, not 25 years back, the world did not recognize the importance of forests, which our forefathers, which our rishis, which our great empires recognized. But that is not what we are taught. We worship trees. Why? We worship nature. Why? We worship water. Why? No one knew. In fact, when I was a child, my mother used to say, don't waste water. I always used to think water is available so much. Why my mother is saying, don't waste water? In fact, in our village, in winter, if you drill through your hand, in 2 feet, 2.5 feet, you used to get water. That was the extent of groundwater available. Still my mother used to say, don't waste water. Because water was sacred. Tree was sacred. Animals were sacred. If all Indians decide to eat like Americans, what will happen? The answer is there in ourworldindata.com. If all of us stop eating dosas, vadas, idlis, and go to McDonald's and burgers, all of us, we will need 6 times the agricultural land we have today. We will need 2.5 times the size of India. If the whole world shifts to Indian model of eating food, dosa, vada, idli, and some meat, not the meat, which is the central food there. If the whole world shifts to Indian way of eating food, we will need only 44% of the agricultural land we are using today. Do we know any of these things? Do we know food style is food culture? There is every 25-30 kilometers in India. Because of the great innovative minds of our women, we have culinary art, culinary culture, culinary specialities. I am still searching for that woman who made the puppet to give her Nobel Prize. Is it easy to make puppet? Do we remember all this? Can you go back to those days? This food culture is what is making us feed 18% of our population with 1% agricultural land, along with 30% of animal population. This is not what we are taught about our country. We know nothing about our country. I am giving you one more question. Every day we see rape, murder, and all of us feel as if we are living in a country of criminals. I want you to go to one website, that is United Nations website. In that website, the crime rates of different countries are given. What is the crime rate per thousand population or rape per 100,000 population? This is given. You know, India is the lowest in all crimes, including murder. And in the first 100 countries, India does not figure in rape at all. But that is not what we know about our country. In spite of the fact that we are one of the least policed countries in the world. I asked this question to IIT Madras. How many police stations India has? Can anyone tell me here? Can anyone tell me how many towns and cities and villages India has? 2 questions. You are all intelligent people. You should not be glued to only your textbooks, which will give you nothing except marks. You need to gather knowledge about yourself to talk to a foreigner when he comes. Sir, this is our country. Do you know that? Our country has 6,68,000 towns and villages, according to the 2011 census. We have only 14,800 police stations. We are one of the least policed countries in the world, and with the least crime rates in the world, because of respect for parents, respect for elders, respect for teachers, respect for even the village people. My neighbor has slapped and corrected me. Today the teacher cannot slap the students. You know why? We are following the Western discipline or indiscipline. Our country has been built on reverence. Reverence for teachers, reverence for books, reverence for education, reverence for nature. Paul Woodruff, one of the greatest educators in America, has written a book. Modernity first destroys the sense of reverence. We must respect the teacher. He or she is a symbol of learning. You know, in America, from India, students who go, they attain very top positions. In fact, in Carnegie Mellon, Harvard, management institutes, our students are almost 15-20%. Whereas their population in America is less than 1.5%. How is it people who are just 1.5% of the population in America are securing admissions 20%, 15%, 18% in leading educational institutions was studied by American think tank. They came with the answer, the Indian students perform so well because they respect the parents at home and teachers in the class. Do we know these values? We should not look at our teacher as only a human being. She is an institution. We learn through her. She may not be the ultimate knowledge, but she shows the way to secure knowledge. Your classroom does not teach you. The atmosphere in the classroom teaches you. The school doesn't teach you. The atmosphere in the school teaches. That's why there are good schools and bad schools. The bad school doesn't teach you. It corrupts you. It distorts you. It destroys you. You seek admission in a good school. Why? Because you seek a good atmosphere. All this we should internalize. And this requires a much greater reading, gathering of knowledge, the kind of time that you spend on WhatsApp and all that. Please divert the screen time to securing knowledge of this kind. I will say 2 more things to say how the Indian society functions, the family functions, how our social order works. All this our education system, our media, our government, our laws, our courts are trying to destroy. Not many people will speak so openly, so plainly, so truthfully. Because everybody wants to secure the applause of everybody. It's not possible. You have to tell the truth and take the displeasure of people also. Now, In India, the average number of people living per household is 4.5. In every household, there are some households in which there are even 7-8 persons. In my household, for instance, there are some households in which there are only 2 persons. The average is 4.5. In America, in the year 1960, because you must all listen to why I am quoting America, many people will ask, because that is the country we think is the greatest country, the example of which all of us should follow. This is the fixation in our mind. So I am going to quote you only what happens in America, because all our friends, our relatives, many of them are in America. They speak so highly about America, and so we should know about America to know what India should be doing, or we should be doing vis-a-vis what the Americans do. In the year 1960, the number of persons residing per household in America was 3.3. Please note this carefully. Today it is 2.5. This 0.8% reduction per household meant constructing 32 million more houses. It meant $8.5 trillion. It means immeasurable damage to environment. These are all American studies. But in India, we have 4.5 persons per household. If we follow the American way of life, we don't want our parents to live with us. We don't want to live with our parents. We will marry in the manner we want. We have nothing to do with elders. I have nothing to do with my sister. I have nothing to do with my brother. These are all contract-based societies. We are born with them. What regulates the relationship between us and my father and mother and my brother and sister is only law. This is the attitude. But we are a relation-based society. We share the sufferings of people. If a sister is invalid, if a brother is invalid, we don't admit them in asylums. We take care of them at home. So this 4.5% per household, if it gets reduced by 1, we will need 55 million more houses. And if it comes to the same level as America, 2.5, we will need 150 million houses. There is no space in India. There is no money in India. Do we know all this? I'll go to the next stage. You know, in America, there is a legally provided social security system where everybody pays a 12.5% tax, and their parents, grandparents, everybody is taken care of. Their unemployed people is taken care of. Their own unemployment is taken care of. So this was the system that was introduced sometime in 1960. Today what is happening? In those days, more people were born than living. It's called baby boomers period. So a lot of money was coming into the social security system. And so the payout was easy. After 2006, it reversed. Population began declining. The number of people who began claiming social security system rose. With the result, there is a deficit in the social security account. And the future social security burden, if it is reduced to the present day value, it is $62 trillion, which is 3 times the GDP of America, against which America doesn't have even 1 rupee. They nationalized the families. Family responsibilities were nationalized. Relationships were destroyed. Only 28% of the Americans live with husband and wife with children. 49% of the American families consist of single parent families or single families. It's because sense of relationship was lost. The sense of mutual duties were lost. Only the rights consciousness, my right, my life, my enjoyment, that has led them to chaos. Now come to India. In India, we take care of 99% of Indians take care of their parents. They take care of even extended parents, extended family people. They take care of their grandparents. You know why? This we think as our duty. Man is not born only with rights. is also born with duties. So in the year 1948, when H.G. Wells drafted the Human Rights Declaration, about which we are actually deifying, worshipping human rights. So H.G. Wells sent the draft of the human rights document to Mahatma Gandhi and asked him to sign that. Mahatma Gandhi said, I will sign this provided you change the title from human rights into human duties. He proved right. But are we taught this in our schools? In our colleges? Does our media speak about it? Do our social research institutions talk about it? But we are surviving only because of these things. Our society stands on sense of duty, which is called in English approximately the idea of dharma. These are all not theories. These are all in textbooks. This is a functioning model. We are beneficiaries of that. We live it, we see it in our own houses, amongst our neighbors, amongst our relatives. The people who would be credited for having had this great culture handed down from generation to generation are our women, not men. I can tell you this. In 2001, when I was called to America and when I undertook a tour and spoke in different educational institutions, I gave a lecture in San Jose, which is available in YouTube, but it is not a video record, an audio record. What I spoke is, Indian economy is feminine in character. That is why we save more, we spend less. We are a society which converts waste into wealth. Whereas in America, they have a quality of turning wealth into waste. Have you seen in America? The best cars are flattened into a steel plate and thrown into the kiln. But here, those cars are repaired and reused in the seventh hand. Cycle is used like that. Nothing which is broken is thrown. It will be repaired and used. This is what we call as reuse culture to save our environment. This no educational institution taught. Nothing should be wasted. Is an inherent value that our culture, our scriptures, our values, our families instilled in us. So, don't think the Indian economy is rising today merely because of exports or merely because of XY factor which is associated with economics. It is actually the quality of the Indian society to stand on its own. That it does not, for example, if all earning Indians decide to disown the responsibility towards the elders and dependents on them, 60 crore people will be standing before Narendra Modi's house for 2 square meals a day. There will be no India. Do we know this? So, young children, try to gather the real knowledge about India. Try to understand a culture which has lived for 5,000 years, has handed down a living model which is environmentally compatible, which works with the what are called the modern economic theories, and which is going to be the way to the world also if you are capable of convincing the world that we have a living model of this kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sorry to sound cliched, it was indeed a very inspiring and a spirited speech. You made us all feel so proud to be an Indian in so many ways. Thank you so much, sir.